Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of The Weekly in 2020.
Here we go. Cheers to a new year.
Now, topics. What we want to focus on today, Riley and I have both been doing some research, is lean manufacturing, right? And what that looks like from the experience we've had with our shops, what we've researched, and really just kind of unpack this, talk about the subject, and perhaps offer up some ideas about how shops we work with that are interested in adopting lean could go about adopting lean.
Absolutely. I think we've been in, 10 plus shops each just in the past couple months. Mm-hmm. And it's been interesting to see who's adopted these practices versus who's thinking about adopting these practices versus individuals that may not even really understand the benefits or what could come of it. So I figured if anything, we'll just kind of chat about it and go from there.
So I talked to you about it a lot, but there's a really interesting book written by 3 MIT professors called The Machine That Changed the World. Mm-hmm. And it was all about how after World War II, Toyota and Japanese companies really started to adopt this idea of lean manufacturing, right? And what the book really unpacks is how does it differ from the production line, right? And the standard assembly, which had dominated the auto industry in the United States. Yep. And I think on the surface, at least going into it, what I understood about lean was that it was very workflow focused, right? It's like, okay, this is how it flows from the instance it gets in the shop, right? We have our material, it goes down the line, it's very smooth, right? And there's not a lot of waste. And what I really started to learn about is that, yes, that's part of lean, but like really lean is a mentality, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, how do we iterate and become 1% better every single day? And I think that ultimately is what can be applied to every single shop that we work with, or any shop that's interested in starting to get into lean manufacturing.
Yeah, and I think if anything, I'd be interested to see what people have. I know we have quite a few people that are listening now that what they've experienced in the past of just starting to adopt these practices. Mm-hmm. Have they just gone full bore and gotten certified, brought on professionals? You can bring in external consulting groups to come in and do things. So what were the first few approaches that they took to adopting it? I think that'd be an awesome one to hear about from specific people too. Mm-hmm.
It's really cool. There's a lot of grants available in each state for shops to invest in this sort of mentality and workflow.
I think you can do it through your local MEP chapter too. So I would reach out to them if you are interested or thinking about it.
So let's keep it in line a little bit with paperless parts, right? So one of the things that really interested me is that in lean, right, in an assembly line, you have each exact step, right? And so the problem is that as it goes through an assembly line, at least in production style, right, what Ford built out and what was in the United States for a long time, if there's an issue, it's not really raised. If there's a defect, it's not raised until the very end of the process, right? And it's hard to then go pinpoint of the 30 steps which one the issue arose at, right? Whereas in lean, you raise the flag right away, right? So you go in and you clean up the problem, you identify what the issue was, and then you go forward, and that issue likely should never occur again, right? And so for shops, though, involved in the design process, how can they start to really easily adopt lean manufacturing ideas and implementation is that with external sharing, you can now become a part of the design process, right? So if you notice a manufacturability issue,
I was gonna say, when you say design, I think we're talking previous to even the quote coming in. It's working with the customer because they may not know exact EFM.
Most have no idea.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, so you're able to identify that manufacturability issue before it ends up on your shop floor, and then you got to think on your feet, likely take a hit because you're gonna have to make some changes in order to actually manufacture it, or worse, go back to the customer and say, listen, we can't do this, right? We got to go back and go through the revision process. We got to scrap some of this work we already did.
Now you're already chopping into the lead time that you somewhat promised them. Yeah.
And that's what's so interesting that this book talked about was Toyota was very involved with their manufacturers, their suppliers, from the get-go on design, right? Because they wanted to understand, okay, what can we actually manufacture before we go design something? What is capable?
Yeah. I think it just takes so much post quote dangers or risks out of things by adopting that mindset up front, because I don't know how many times it does play a lot into the additive space as well. Like a lot of parts can't or are not optimized to be made on an additive sort of printer or platform in general. So adopting a mindset in the beginning where you work with individuals to sort of streamline what that part looks like, so then it has the most optimal build process post that. I think, cut and dry saves you money and saves you time. What are the steps are there? There's work in process for them. There's continuous improvement, investing in just general human efficiencies.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that's really...
There's JIT, which is extremely interesting for manufacturing, of just optimizing the amount of materials that you hold and how much product, even post-processed product, that you hold on site as well, and just having like the leanest, most simple looking shop you can possibly have.
Mm-hmm. So what does that get at? That clutter is inherently bad?
Yeah. So disorganization leads to minutes wasted all over. So like if you think of an inventory system that's not properly accounted for or reconciled every month, when you go to look for something, you may get to it and be like, oh, it's not there. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now I got to go back to the system that I looked it up in, got to look for it again, and then I got to go find it, and that time just adds up and adds up. Mm-hmm. So the concept of just-in-time manufacturing is you order the part, or you order the material needed for the part when the part is placed by the customer. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to wait for the material. You don't have to hold that on premise, which a lot of people say that comes with a cost because it takes up space. And then you eventually pass all those savings on to the customer by having a more efficient, sort of streamlined process. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting with prototype work, especially in our industry, is how do you have quick turn work when you don't hold material? Mm-hmm. You have to have a really good relationship with a material individual, yep. Maybe someone that's down the street or someone from online. But I'd love to hear people's feedback about how they've run like the leanest version of a prototype shop, but just to focus on lean manufacturing in general.
Mm-hmm. Returning to the idea of like how you implement mm-hmm. lean, right? It's really interesting because the idea is you're supposed to train a very skilled, dynamic workforce, right? So when you invest in an employee, you should be investing in them for a long time, right? Because if you build up their skills deck, it's only going to pay off in what their operational capabilities are in your shop, right? So at least what I've noticed with shops that we've worked with that are lean in our research is that lean shops, lean manufacturing enterprises generally have less employees, but they're all significantly more skilled and dynamic, mm-hmm. right? So one thing that was interesting is that in Japanese shops, right, lean shops, whether you're a mechanical engineer, whatever role you have, your first 3 months are on the assembly line, working. You're working on the shop floor, right? Understanding what manufacturability means, mm-hmm. right? You've just studied 4, 6, maybe 8 years, but now you're gonna go see what it looks like, right? Just like everyone else. From there, they spend 3 months in marketing, right? To understand the business side of it as well, right? Yeah. So, but think about it. By the time 6 months later, they finally go work on a project they've built
and they've tried to sell it.
And so they understand the whole process involved in manufacturing. Yeah. And the other piece that I think is, it's different. This is more of an extrapolation because we're just entering the workforce, right? But with lean manufacturing, again, they really invest in their workforce because these people stay there a long time, right? So these Japanese companies, there's a lot of honor, and it's kind of embedded in the culture to stay somewhere for the long haul, right? Which makes sense to then invest in your employees and their skills deck if the benefits of that are going to be reaped for 40 plus years, right?
Which amortizes across a longer period of time.
Yeah. Which again, thinking like how do you adopt lean manufacturing, it's just like a total mental shift. Then this gets into training is fascinating to me, mm-hmm. right? Because regardless of if you're even thinking of actually adopting lean, I constantly hear people talking about training is the hardest part. Building up the skills of my employees, right? So one of the guys I was just working with, he's listed out several different levels now.
Of what?
Of what it takes to be a programmer and machinist, right? So you can be a different level for each of the...
At their shop.
Yes, at their shop, right? And there's a very clear workflow.
Is it kind of gamified, or is it you achieve it?
It's, I think so really there's very strict requirements to move from one level to the next.
Right? It's not time box, like you do 3 months and then you
No. It's like I can do X, Y, Z in a certain amount of time, right? I have certain capabilities.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And he built that himself? Or?
Well, I think the leadership team built it out because again, they were struggling with how to train people, right? And this is, we hear the skills gap, right? Mm-hmm. It's so interesting. We bring up, there's a skills gap to our customers to hear their thoughts on it. And they're like, it's been around forever, right? It's just that now people are like talking about it more and more. One of the shops we have up in Michigan is like, I was a kid, 15 years old. I heard my dad complaining He's about the
I don't
skills
have
gap,
employees.
right? He's a second generation owner.
Yeah.
He's like, even then, over lunch, I heard about them complaining about the skills gap, right?
Yeah.
So this idea of like what is the best method for investing in my employees' skill set, at least in my opinion, almost lends itself back to lean, right? And like even a very simple way to adopt.
And I think a huge part of lean is this accurate, consistent, predictable process, especially whether it's the actual manufacturing process and you have your workflows set up in a U shape so multiple people can be, or less people can be involved, but they can be involved in multiple steps at a time, versus if you take it back even further to the front office. So how do you have a repeatable process up front that's consistent, easy to understand? And I think that's, not to plug Paperless, but I think that's a huge point of where our Paperless can come in and sort of drive. Maybe we're not advocating like we make you lean, but it allows you to check that box on that sheet of like what you should be doing and how you should be handling this process, because we have a UI that's very intuitive. We have a support team that'll help. We have all the stuff that allows an individual that may not have the skills of the 40 plus person, but they can still get the job done based off of what the workflows are set up as.
Right. It lends itself to a dynamic workforce.
Absolutely.
An organization, because Paperless Parts is dynamic, right? So relative to existing level enterprise software or manufacturing software you've been using, this can grow with you and adapt and can be configured to what makes the most sense for your shop, right? Which is a totally brand new
How
concept.
many people do you have that have brought in estimators just in the time period that you've been working with them?
Junior,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
so, probably 5.
4 or 5?
Yeah.
Same with me.
And again, the only in the last 3 months have we been like, wow, Paperless Parts is an unbelievable platform to train a junior estimator in, because you've got guardrails and you have context to train them in, and they have very explicit responsibilities which you can train them in.
Versus before, they may have just been like, here's a basket of things, sift through this, go look at everything, and then decide or tell me a price. And without those steps or those rules or that, like you mentioned, guardrails, it can get scary. And there's money on the line because quoting is like the front end of the business. So by having that sort of like, here are the 2 lanes that you can drive down, go in the left lane if you want to go faster, go in the right lane if you want to go slower. That's really cool for an older estimator to bring in a junior estimator and be like, you're going to be in the right lane for a little bit, I'll be in the left lane, and we'll just kind of keep driving. So it's really, really unique to see people start to do that.
To close, we might as well discuss kind of what our discoveries were with lean manufacturing, right? So I think the one that's really interesting, right? How can anyone using Paperless Parts get involved in lean manufacturing really, really quickly is to get involved in the design process, right? So when you receive files or projects from your customer, be very transparent in the manufacturability that's going to require, right? Because that gets you involved in the design process right away and ensures that something's not going to end up on your shop floor, which is actually impossible to make, right? So it completely removes any barrier to issues arising later in the process.
Yeah. For me, I think having this big part of lean is defining specific responsibilities that are consistent and always going to be sort of checked off, whether it's the front office or the back office or shipping. And I'd be interested if there's a way that we could help you guys in any like front office, back office, or shipping or whatnot, and how we can come up with checklists or things that allow you guys to be more streamlined in whatever those processes are.
And then I think lastly, invest in your workforce, right? Like figure out how you can make everyone more skilled, right? The answer isn't let's just go hire 5 more people, right? Let's hire 2 to 3 people and figure out how to make them incredible and dynamic, right? So they can handle several different jobs. And again, bringing back, I think that idea of like, there's certain levels for a programmer, there's certain levels for a machinist, right? And here's the track to achieve that next level. Is really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think a really cool question to ask people in your shop is just go ask them what tools they would need to be the most successful version of themselves and how to be the most effective version of themselves. Because our CEO asked us that, and I had never heard that before. And then once I did it made me realize how much, like, if you really need something, that's what your boss is there to do for you, is to make you the most effective employee. So if you haven't done that, go ask people on your shop floor what they need. Maybe they need a new pen. Maybe they need a CAD viewer. Maybe they need
Second monitor.
a second monitor.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's a huge one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a second
Second
monitor so they can have the
monitor's
part viewer open here and paperless open here.
If you've used a second monitor, you know how unbelievable
It's
a second
addicting.
monitor is.
You'll have 6 by the
Yeah.
time you're done. But just ask that question. It opens up a lot of doors that I think people would be very interested to hear.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. Well, that's all we have this week. We're excited to see you next week. If there's anything we talked about which you are particularly interested in that you want us to expand upon a little more, please don't hesitate to reach out to either of us.
Oh, yeah.
Phone, email, support line.
You name it.
And if there's something you want us to discuss next week, please reach out as well. So we hope everyone has a great week. Cheers.
Cheers.
We'll see you next time.